Welcome to Dave and Dom Demystify, a fintech futures podcast, helping make sense of the world of fintech and digital finance. Please sit back and listen as the two Ds take a subject and discuss it to make it clearer and easier to understand.
Demystify.
Welcome to today's episode, and joining us from Denmark is Christie Kristensen from Danske Bank. So welcome, Christie. I wonder if you could just give us a brief introduction to yourself and tell us a bit about what you do.
Of course, and thank you so much for inviting me on today's show. I've been looking forward to it. It's been coming along for a while now since, as you mentioned, we met in Stockholm. So I joined Danske Bank in January, and I have been sitting with open banking and been at startups with IAM, got acquired, and through all that jazz, which was really great fun and working across a global platform and MasterCard, right? But now today, I'm a partnership manager at Danske Bank, where I focus on how do we bring embedded services, financial services into the likes of ERPs and other systems that our corporate customers work within to just make their lives easier. So that's really good fun.
I think that's quite interesting, really, because literally every other guest that we've spoken to about embedded anything has been the provider of an embedded finance typically. So, but this is you pulling in partners to embed into your products and services and systems?
Over time, yes, that would be pretty cool, right? But right now we're looking at really thinking of where do our corporate customers work? Where would they ideally like to continue working? And making sure that the data they have within their bank are presented within those systems. So really making sure that their financial data and all the financial services that we provide them through the, if I may, like traditional ways of working, within this instance, Danske Bank's district, for example. But that should equally also be an opportunity for corporate customers to utilize their data within the systems they work and they prefer working within. So it is really embedding our financial services within other systems. But that's not to say the other way around is a possibility.
Cool. And have you got any examples of like customers that you think are doing very interesting stuff with Danske Bank?
So right now we are actually in pilot with some really cool premium APIs, as we call it. Out in the market, there's a lot of talk about open banking, so the regulatory PSD2 APIs when we talk about embedded finance. And I was just in Helsinki a couple of weeks ago as well. We talked about all things embedded finance. But the story and the focus were heavily around open banking. So the regulatory APIs. What we're doing is looking beyond those required APIs for a bank to expose and look at what other data sets, additional information could we expose through an API. It's almost like looking at the next digital transformation of files and going from this batch way of working to fully automated. Also in the world of AI, you want to make sure you have consistent, trusted, reliable data directly from the source which you believe in, which is the banking data, right? With that, we're working with some pilot customers today to really test and co-design and co-build those functionalities within our premium API offering. For example, we're working with a pilot customer on how can you, with our transactions and balancing API, actually automate your workflows when it comes to understanding your cash management. How can you make sure that all the work you usually do, even on a quarterly or yearly basis, you're trying to look at financial reporting, you're looking in the hindsight of the history of how your organization is running versus actually predicting the future. So it's this switch and the change of how do we as organizations want to run healthy organizations. And that's from being data obsessed and being data driven. And all that data and the workflows and the systems around that should be automated as much as possible. So it becomes also like a tech choice. Do you want to continue doing with files, which have been running very successfully and will continue to do so? Or do you actually, in your digital transformation journey, want to move more into automation and therefore also utilize direct API connections to a bank, right? So that's from a corporate customer's perspective. So there's another example where someone wants to basically be able to create an automated financial reporting to leadership. And they can use the premium APIs as well. So they don't have to manually go into the banking system, upload, download from one system to another and work through Excel and like very heavily manual tasks. They can automate that through support of APIs and AI. So there's a lot of focus on how do you streamline that and how do you almost digitalize the world of the CFOs and also then free up time to focus on running a healthy organization, be able to predict whether that FX trades or currency risks, and also in terms of what does our balance look like across the different accounts, and being able to then navigate and support from more strategic level the organization versus reporting on historical information.
It's really interesting because I guess what you've seen is the opportunity to use some of the massive amounts of data that is there available, which is often just forgotten about, becomes dark data in terms of what you're holding as an organization. And I'm kind of interested, what's the kind of product development strategy? Is it your corporate customers coming to you and saying, this is something we'd like to do? Or is it you coming up with some ideas and then going to them and sort of co-creating things?
Both, I would say, actually. We're building this ecosystem with partners as well as with our corporate customers to understand also where do they need us to expose premium APIs and where do they need us to design the APIs for external usage? Because at the core, and I think everyone knows this by now, but like 95% of all products fail because you have not co-created, you don't understand the true purpose of your product, right? You haven't spoken to your customers. So that's what we do. We go hand in hand with them. And there's I would say, a heavy focus on or heavy kind of direction into that customers and partners come to us. They come to us and ask for what is possible, what are we doing, how can we do something? These are the challenges we sit with. What could we do? What do you see? And also look to us as that partner, bank partner, and advisor in how to run a healthy organization when it comes to their financial operations.
I mean, it sounds like the relationship, I guess these sorts of things would have kind of existed, but more in kind of paper sort of Excel format. But it not having sort of looked at kind of corporations before, you do often think that actually if they had access to information a bit more in real time, they'd be able to make better decisions. So it sounds like the whole kind of relationship that Danske has with its corporate customers is kind of evolving as well around all of this. And is that something that you're kind of seeing?
Yeah, and I think it evolves in the way that we move with the market and with where our customers are going, right? You mentioned real time, and that's one of the biggest drivers behind that digital shift and the choice of, do you want to continue going down the route of utilizing the files and working in batch as you have always done? Or are you sitting in your own digital transformation and want to automate and therefore also rely on real-time access through an API? So we have always been a strong partner for our corporate customers. And I think that probably the newer aspect of it is what I sit with, which is partnerships. So we don't only go out as we have always done and are really proud of being really good at when it comes to advisory to our corporate customers and listen to them. But we're now also looking at how can we work with their systems? How can we work with the tools, the systems, the formats, rather than a treasury management or an ERP system? How can we work within those organizations and with those organizations to basically help our joint customers, corporate customers? And that is newer from an integrations perspective. And that's what I'm focusing on. Because again, I think the role, from my perspective, the role of the bank is also evolving. I see that we are powering finance. We don't necessarily always have to have the direct interface. We can be the infrastructure that powers those solutions in collaboration with those integrations from the other systems. So I think that is a newer evolvement with how we go about the ecosystem and our role in the ecosystem as a bank. And again, also with what's happening with everything embedded finance.
I'm intrigued with the move to offering kind of real-time data, because obviously that potentially the volume of data itself could impact performance, etc. I mean, is this putting pressure on your, like, I don't know, do you have a legacy core or do you have a modern core that it doesn't create any issues for you? I mean, how are you handling this shift?
Yeah. And again, I think it's one of the things where we sit in tech, and the organization and the structure within Danske Bank, at least from my perspective, is relatively unique within the banking sector because we sit hand in hand with business and tech. So I sit within a tribe which focus on customer integrations, but I sit on the business side, but all my colleagues around from a tech perspective are my neighbors in the office, and we all have the same goal. So rather than from a business or technology perspective, we're all trying to solve for the same problem, which also just helps to move way faster than if you are working across silos and not able to cross-collaborate across different teams or even units. I think because we are so aware of where we have to go, and with the close collaboration to the technology side of the organization, it's quite prompt. And again, the Danske Bank is investing in technology and want to become that one corporate bank as part of our 428 strategy. And I think that makes a huge difference, because if we were in silos and I sit on the business side and I think I have great ideas and talking a lot of with the possibilities with customers and partners and with the ecosystem and seeing where do we fit in, if I'm not able to actually bring that intelligence back into the house with what products do our customers and partners want from us and where do they see the value, if we couldn't bring that into the right teams and get that buy-in and execution fast, then it didn't really matter, because then we're just talking about empty air for a very long time and nothing really happens. But because we are so intertwined in the way we work from a business and technology perspective, we're able to really move the needle and also proactively change priorities on the back of those customer and partner dialogues.
It sounds like, I mean, you're building a kind of fintech basically within Danske in many ways. Like culturally, it sort of sounds like you've got all the bits there. There's going to be fast iterate, all of these things. And it's really interesting to kind of hear a bank taking this approach, because effectively you're going to become more of a kind of technology operation in many ways, aren't you?
Exactly right, David. And I think for me, this is why I got so excited when I first started talking to the team about this role back late last year, because I realized that, and more importantly, they actually put the money on the words, or like they actually execute on what they're saying. I don't remember
that. Where their mouth was.
Exactly that one. Because in recruitment, of course, you're trying to sell your best, just both from a talent perspective, but also from a business perspective, right? When I joined in January, I was amazed with how much people around me, the team, the organization, are truly leaning in to change and putting the customer first when it comes to integration services. And I thought that was amazing. And I would put it just like you said, David. It's almost by working within a fintech in a big corporate organization, because we really want to move fast and be agile and adhere to the expectations and feedback and creating that like flight wheel, right? So being able to constantly, and this is textbook, but we are actually practicing it, being able to go out, get intelligence and insights and feedback from a customer or partner, bring that back into the organization, bring it into the developer roadmap, execute it, and then launch it. That flight wheel is up and running and existing. And I think that is amazing. And that's also when you're sitting and you're talking to folks and understanding their pain points and being able to then bring that back and do something about it. That's pretty cool. And that's why I fell in love with joining the team. And it's a good fun ride.
I'm so happy to hear that. I mean, I look from the outside at Danske Bank quite often, and for probably over 10, 12 years, but I've always seen them as a very progressive bank. They've been ahead of the game in thinking about everything from like being a multi or omni-channel bank to driving customer engagement, et cetera, et cetera. So it's nice to hear that actually it's not just advertising, it's actually happening in the organization. Well, I mean, you mentioned your 428 kind of plan. Can you tell us a bit more about that? I mean, is that a strategic kind of goal to achieve something specific?
Yeah, so for me specifically, within our 428 strategy, we want to be that corporate bank, the partner of the ecosystem. So to what we talked about, when it comes to integrating our financial services within the systems of where corporate customers work, rather that outside of our ecosystem, hereby I mean district, or if it's even within district, that doesn't necessarily matter. We need to be technically advanced with our premium APIs to offer better services and solutions to help these organizations run healthy businesses, rather that from collaboration with ERPs or collaborating with them directly because they are a large enterprise and they have their own setups and they prefer doing it themselves. Or if it's a smaller to mid-size that use another fintech or another accounting system, then that is where we should be. So I think we're looking at it from way more of an ecosystem play with how do we go about that? How do we enforce that culture through our systems and also exposing premium APIs, right? So that is what my focus is within the Forward 28 strategy.
So if it's a strategy, somebody within the bank must have looked at like, well, what's the future going to be? And this is an important part of the future. So I guess what we're hearing is like a kind of a representation of the evolution of finance for large banks over the next sort of decades or so, where, you know, it isn't just about sort of money and money transfer. There's all the added value which kind of comes with it. And it's really fascinating to kind of hear that's been kind of thought through and then codified and then turned into roles and now is sort of being rolled out.
Absolutely. And almost think about it also like when you think of what it means to run financial operations, again, like how do I navigate ever-changing dynamics around my organization to make sure we have liquidity, that we are healthy and we can do what we need, regardless of the complexity of one structure. Am I a small startup that have very simple setup? Or am I a bigger organization where I have multiple banks and I have multiple systems? Or am I global? How much of a currency exposure do I have? All those things, the more complexity. But regardless, at the core of it all, transactions are there, right? And you can almost look at transactions as being the fingerprint of a corporate organization. Through that fingerprint, through that transaction, you know exactly how that organization is running. Do they understand how to manage their cash? Are they healthy? What does their books look like? All of that, with being able to embed that data and that knowledge into systems where they work and utilize that across other different data sets and combining that with other things within their systems like an ERP, we just enable them to run even better organizations because it becomes data-driven. And I think also, you know, if we look at trends, we've almost seen like the open banking being that catalyst for what we see today as being embedded finance. And then now we're sprinkling AI over it, and therefore also access to automated data, trusted data, making sure that you can bring that into workflows to then add embedded AI on top of it. That element of real-time data and access to transactions are just heightened.
So I guess one of the things that's sort of going through my head, and you kind of alluded to this in a way, so you're starting at the kind of corporate customer level, but I presume once you've kind of got that muscle memory working, there's no reason why you can't roll it out to smaller businesses as well. Because one of the, I guess, gaps for a small business or even a mid-sized business is that sort of financial management. So you're having to do things very manually, which means you're relying on a bookkeeper or an accountant, or you're doing that in the sort of final few hours of the day. So is that something on the roadmap for you as well?
Yes. We want to basically be able to serve everyone, regardless of size. Because again, it's just exposing of an API within your bank. So we're just opening the door for you to access that data from an API versus upload, download through the traditional files. And you can do that regardless of size and complexity of your organization. And rather, if you want to do your own structure and workflows in your own systems, or if you do that through other vendors, then again, totally up to you. We just want to make sure that we empower that intelligence and allow them to run healthy organizations regardless of size. And I think right now we're in pilot phase with our premium APIs, and we do see a mix actually from both large organizations and enterprises that want to integrate this, as well as the smaller players and fintechs out there. Also, it depends on where are they in their maturity curve. How eager are they to embark on this journey as well? Are they truly data-driven themselves as an organization? Do they understand where the power of APIs together with AI come in when it comes to cash management and treasury and so forth? So right now we're quite agnostic on who are we working with, as long as we have that transparent upfront dialogue of what does it actually mean to be a pilot customer? Are you willing to do that? And how do we roll that out with you and together with you, right? Because it has its pros and cons to be part of a pilot program as well. So again, in the essence, over time, the plan is that we will be able to offer premium APIs just like any other SaaS business. You go in, you buy the access of the APIs and you embed and integrate those either directly, or you enable that consent through our marketplace, through District, to allow your systems to fetch that data on your behalf. So again, it's like, depending on how you look at it, we just want to serve everyone. We are both system as well as business agnostic. We don't favor anyone.
I think this is genius because essentially through the APIs, a corporate customer is going to basically be able to do things that they couldn't do before, which were either slow because they were file-based, etc., or they were manual because they were looking at reports. But now they're going to integrate this into their own systems and getting real-time data, but they're integrated with you as a bank, which probably isn't available at every other bank. So actually, this is a great kind of customer retention strategy, because once you're integrated, you're unlikely to move. Is that a fair thing to say? Or
I think that's a fair thing to say.
I think it's genius. As a customer, I'd obviously be thinking, well, hold on a sec. Once I start doing this, then we're totally reliant on this bank. But if you trust them and actually, look, most of the products that you get across banks aren't very differentiated. And everyone talks about product personalization, blah, blah, blah. Nobody's really doing any of that anyway. So where is the differentiation? The differentiation has to come in with what you can do with the bank. And this is like ahead of the curve. So well done to the bank. I'm deeply impressed.
And I think I double down on also, David, you mentioned this earlier as well, our mindset that we are co-designing, co-building, co-collaborating with partners and customers. Because I think, as we've seen so many others do across multiple industries, if you don't truly understand and take the time to work with your customers to understand, okay, where do we fit in? Where do we actually bring the highest value to them? How can we play a really important, meaningful, and impactful role in their work, in their lives? Then we can create really cool stuff, and we can create and publish really cool APIs and do all sorts of things. But if that's not what actually solve for pain points today, then it doesn't really matter. So I think for us, that close collaboration with partners and being able to actually execute on that feedback and bring that into our roadmap, I feel like that is a differentiator for us as well. Because from what I see also, I'm an old chief marketing officer at the open banking scale-up, Aya, that's just where the heart of success lies. That's when you are that intertwined with your customers. And you're not just saying it because, again, it's textbook. Oh, we're all customer obsessed. Oh, we all, we speak to our customers. Yeah, of course, we all do that. But we practice it. We actually do it in our day-to-day as part of our ways of working. And I think that's pretty cool.
I mean, I do like that, because I think the reality is in banking over the years, customers are a pain in the arse, basically. So you can kind of do, I mean, it's true, isn't it? I remember talking to someone in a very large bank, and he said our lives would be a lot better if we didn't have to deal with customers the whole time. And
that's so sad.
But that's kind of old thinking, isn't it? And now my view is, if people don't get close to their customers and listen to what customers are saying, they'll just get left behind. So they're going to be exposed for being the dinosaurs that they are. And I think it's very heartening. Dharmesh has seen me as a sort of UX professional over 30 years, scream that we should just, the answer is obvious, just go and talk to people and you'll see what you need to kind of do. So it's really heartening to kind of hear that you're doing that, but it kind of underlines the importance of doing it. Because if you don't, you then just come up with something that nobody's really that interested in. And I love, again, that you've kind of taken it to the next level, which is looking at things like co-creation as well, because that is proper true partnership, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And I would almost say also, if you don't do it, and if you don't invest in your customers and bring them in the driver's seat, then what are you in the business for? because at the core of a business, you are there to serve your customers. So if you neglect your customers and undermine their importance and you think better, right? I think it's also one of those things that organizations will see that, oh, we know better. Don't worry, we know what you need. And I think we're taking a very different approach. We don't take the arrogant position of saying, we know what you want. We say, actually, we want to hear what you want. Tell us what you want and we will build it, right? So it's a different dynamic, almost like a power shift, right? And really bringing the customer in the driver's seat for that co-creation. But that also goes hand in hand with my values as well. And again, that's also where I really feel like this mission that I'm on with our partnerships is just fantastic.
I think it's like every bank should be thinking about, because the days of making lots of money out moving sort of integers from one spreadsheet to another, which is what banking is, they're disappearing. Like Dharmesh and I have talked about the fact that banks have made a fortune out of how slowly that kind of can be done. And all of that's disappearing. So actually banks have to revisit the real value they offer and say, well, how do we kind of build out from that? So it's great to hear that Danske is kind of, I think, leading the way in that.
I think so too. And it's pretty exciting. It's going to be it only gets better and better from here. That's for sure.
So we're almost at the top of our time, but we managed to go 30 minutes without Dave and I asking you a question about AI. But you did mention it, so I want to go back to that. What are you doing with AI and how are your customers leveraging it, or how do you think they will leverage it?
So I think when you are looking at those dull tasks of analyzing data, reporting, identifying opportunities, that can be and will be and should be automated with AI. Like we had this conversation with a treasurer where she said, I don't actually want to do anything. I just want to look at my screen, see what happens, and the system should tell me if I should do something. So I think, again, the premise of how we're working and the time split from gathering, updating, analyzing should now be much more of an execution. You get informed and pushed when things are happening for you to take an action. So I think that's where AI will play a big role in everything around cash management and treasury and so forth, right? And I think having that again, there's this saying of that it's a dying species because you can automate all that, right? So I think it becomes part of how work is evolving and the way of workflows, processes are being automated thanks to AI. And I think it's going to be super interesting to follow what happens there. And maybe I can join the podcast at a later stage once we have some more to talk about on that topic, because we are brewing on something, but going to make that a little cliffhanger.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really, really interesting and fascinating and enlightening conversation.
Thank you so much.
But we'll definitely have you back to talk about this cliffhanger, because now I'm like, oh, we hadn't said that. It's like when you get the end of a Netflix series and there's one more series to come. It's like,
yeah, and you're like, oh, when is the release date? Yeah. Let's definitely do that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it's been a real joy to be part of your show, Dharmesh and David. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you for tuning in to Dave and Dharm Demystify. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tune in next time as we take another topic and demystify it.